Yeah, I mean, certainly just to kind of take a step back, I mean, PayTo really is kind of foundational capability that I think is going to open up so many opportunities. And not only will it play a really important role in terms of how, as an industry, we can look to migrate, payments from BEX over to the MPP, but a better, more modern alternative for direct debit, but also helping to support the migration of credit payments as well. But I think coming back to some of the earlier comments, it really, by enabling that payment initiation, is opening up opportunities for where that can occur and the role that others can play in the ecosystem in terms of being part of that payments journey as well. So we kind of really see it as being really transformational for the market. It is a multi-year journey. These things don't happen overnight. As you know, Chris, the PayTo journey started a number of years ago. I think where we ended 2023, though, was really exciting because we did end up with having about 90% of retail banking transaction accounts enabled in the Australian market. And, I think that's quite kind of astounding in terms of we've now got that critical mass. And now it's about focusing on how do we help support the industry and organisations, merchants, billers, whoever they might be, to use that service to initiate payments from customers' account, but also looking to do that in a better way as well in terms of really leveraging the benefits of PayTo in that, it has the customer authorization in the banking channel. So it's a safer alternative as well. There's the benefits of the real-time payments in terms of knowing immediately the outcome of a payment. You don't need to wait 2 days to know, whether or not that payment has been successful, and the value of that real-time data that can be associated as well. So I'm really quietly optimistic about what 2024 is going to bring. I think in terms of the PayTo journey, it is a journey that does take time to roll out a whole new payment service into the marketplace. But from what we hear from the market, there's a lot of interest around using that service for a range of different use cases. We're already starting to see application in the market, in the travel segment, for example, particularly with the demise of Poly last year. E-commerce, we've seen application in the securities industry, as you know, because you've been heavily involved also in segments like superannuation. So I think it's really exciting in terms of what the future will bring. I think we're kind of at a point where we've got that sort of critical mass and that network effect in place now, and it's now really going to be about what activity we see on the initiation side. And I think, certainly, obviously, the opportunity around starting to work with the industry around the migration of BEX payments as well. And I just want to touch on a couple of comments that were made earlier. I mean, the MPP, and particularly now with PayTo in place, has the capability to support all of the use cases that we see on BEX today. We're working very closely with the industry and with the banks around how are we going to collectively migrate those payments across, and what does that entail? And I think that's really about some of the operational processes that we need to kind of look at and work on. When we look at kind of bulk payments, I think there's there's very large files that need to be thought about. How are we going to process those on the MPP? And there's ways to do that more efficiently as well, with things like kind of batch booking, how you can kind of build that together on the MPP. But actually, a lot of the files that we see are actually quite small numbers of payments. They're kind of less than 10 payments in a file. And there's a real opportunity, I think, for organisations and corporates to start to think about what that transition journey is for them, and how they start to think about utilising some of the benefits of the MPP, and how that kind of sequencing might happen as well. Because again, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It will take time. But I think, once we start to see some activity, some of those payments will start to come across quite quickly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think in pulling that part just for a sec, a little bit more, I think the complexity of the transition, like in particular for transformation around technology and embedding it, because like talking about BEX, it's been so embedded in a lot of the ecosystem, like deeply embedded. And then around it, you've got layers of, call it efficiency pieces that have supported BEX. It's very hard to even get your head around as a large, like I'm just pulling out government department or agency, trying to, transition this across. And so I think you're right, like that will happen. And, whether it's McKinsey or a number of other organizations that will be deeply embedded in that transformation process with some of these large organizations, that becomes incredibly difficult. And I think over the next 12 months, that discussion will start to come up as well. How do we... Okay, so that makes sense. One of the questions that we've got up here in the thing is, can you share anything around, you know, the volumes of where we're at with PayTo in the ecosystem yet? Is that public? Is that out there? Is that... and I think, you know, I personally, I don't want to get too caught up on the volume. One of the things that, you know, I love to see is that, you know, the engagement now, you know, obviously CBA's done great. ANZ's now out in the market with their capability. The other banks are emerging as well. And that, again, as an ecosystem that is supporting this transition, we all win together. And I think that's another big thing that emerged at the end of last year is, you know, the speed at which more and more people are coming to market to be able to offer this capability is really exciting as well. But just going back to the volumes, anything you can share around that specific to PayTo so far?
Yeah, I mean, we don't publish them at the moment. I mean, we know that it is being looked as a data set that potentially in the future, you know, might be kind of sort of published more broadly. I mean, it is still kind of in the early days in terms of scaling up. And for us, it's really about ensuring that we are working with the industry very closely to resolve any kind of, you know, initial issues. You know, there's still a bit of service variability that we need to work through. But we are certainly seeing, you know, very strong month-on-month growth in terms of the ramp up of those volumes. And as we continue to see more adoption on the payment initiation side, I think that's really going to accelerate as well. So I think kind of 2024 is going to see us kind of reach a bit of a tipping point, and then sort of broader market adoption starting to grow. And we're seeing that as well in terms of some of the kind of different use cases that are coming to market as well. And some of the activity that we see there.